Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Joyce, I haven't really thought much about your proposal, but I don't think it sounds okay to me. I don't know what the Ethics Committee, sometimes people get into these jurisdictional, it's my turf, but I think simplifying the, processes and rules and regulations around here, I think everybody would appreciate very much. And so, we can see, and I appreciate the kind words about the McGovern rule, the 72-hour rule, and I think precisely because of what you just said is why we instituted it to begin with, and 90% of the bills considered pursuant to this rule in Congress have complied with that rule. So contrary to mythology, that it is, it's the other way around. I mean, that's just the way it's been. And I hope that you will be successful in persuading the new majority to keep the McGovern rule in place. And if you have a real problem with the 10% that we waived it on, and you want a better record by the Republicans, that you will press the leadership here to do that. I don't regret the few exceptions either that we had to waive the rule to move bills to the floor quickly to deal with emergencies like the infant formula emergency, for example, or Russia's unjustified war against Ukraine. And as I've said many times before, there are also some bills that no one needs that long of a time to review, but providing a few extra days to resolve any disputes or to answer any questions, I think is important. I also agree with you that we can have a 720-hour review process, and that doesn't mean members are going to read the bill. I don't know whether you have read the bills that we brought up before the Rules Committee today for consideration this week, but they've been available for over 72 hours. I'm willing to guess that you haven't, but that's okay. So again, we have I hope that the new majority will keep the McGovern rule in place. If 90% is like an A, right? A minus. You want an A plus, then that's something you ought to strive toward. And I hope that we can. And I'm happy to be supportive of that. Yeah.
If I may, in the 10% where you had to subvert or short circuit the 72-hour process, I think there are cases in there where you may have had 2/3 of the vote, and this wouldn't have been a hindrance. I think on most of the Ukraine votes, it got 2/3.
And maybe and these guys will have to weigh that and decide whether that's the right thing to do. I'm not here to speak against that, but I'm just simply saying that we have tried to change this so that members have more time, because you were right. Previously it was 3 days, and you could count at 11:59 p.m. as one day, and then you could vote on it at 3 in the morning on the third day, and so no one has time to look at this stuff. I just will also say, and this is not necessarily a rules change, but it is a cultural change or an attitude change, is that I don't think that every single bill has to have a roll call vote. There are some bills that we know are going to pass 435 to nothing, non-controversial post office bills, or something that is, it's not terribly earth-shattering. Sometimes it's like less than a paragraph, and yet to demand votes on everything cuts into committee work time, and a lot of the best, most important work that is done here is done in committee, and it creates this kind of hostile attitude. And by the way, I say that not just as a Democrat who have been subjected to endless roll call votes by some of my Republican friends, but I know a lot of Republican members who come to me and say, why don't you fix that in the Rules Committee? Because they too want to spend their time debating important legislation in committee. And so, I think if everybody has the attitude of that our job here is to govern, is to get stuff done, and sometimes disagree when we don't agree on things, but just move the process forward, I think things could be a lot better here. But You know, anyway, but I appreciate everybody being here, and I appreciate your recommendations. I look forward to this rules package being put together. You know, I'll say one thing that I did, you know, when I was first became the chair, is I went around to all the different caucuses, not only talking to Democrats, but also to a lot of Republicans, and solicited their input. And we actually had a bipartisan vote. We had a few Republicans actually vote for the rules package when we first passed it, which is unprecedented. You know, we had some stuff in there like the consensus rule to bring bills to the floor. Someone suggested that we ought to modify that so that it's revenue neutral. I mean, that's something we ought to talk about. Or that so we have an offset on big spending bills. You know, this modernization committee, the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion, all those things kind of came out of discussions I had with people on both sides of the aisle. And so I hope that the process in the next few weeks, you know, follows, you know, that example. I'm not saying we did everything perfectly. I'm not saying that, you know, there were things that I would have liked in our rules packages that couldn't sell to everybody. But again, you're being here, you're presenting these ideas, I think is very constructive. So, Dr. Burgess.